Good evening. Welcome to the February 14th, 2013 Conservation Commission meeting. We are pleased to see we have a number of guests this evening. First item on our agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Becky, could you do the roll call for us, please? Present.
Bruce Bechtel.
Here.
Jeff Goldnow.
Present.
Jessica Vasey.
Here.
Stephanie Coster.
Here.
Dan Ray.
Present.
And since we have two members out this evening, I would like to appoint alternates Jessica Vasey and Stephanie Coster as voting members for our meeting this evening. Now, seeing as how we do have a number of guests here this evening, we're going to rearrange the agenda so that we can get people speaking and out the door on the earlier side rather than the later side. You do not need to hear us approve the minutes, for example. You're welcome to stay and listen for that if you desire, but you certainly don't need to. So with that in mind, we have some wetlands permit applications for oyster reef restoration on behalf of the Nature Conservancy and the University of New Hampshire. And if you'd like to speak to that a little bit. This is the third or fourth year that oyster reef restoration has occurred on the Lamprey River in this area. So.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, I'm Ray Grizzle with the University of New Hampshire, as Kristen Ward with the University of New Hampshire, but also Choice Oysters, and Ray Koniski with the Nature Conservancy. I'm going to be presenting, but they'll be here for questions or whatever.
Hey, excuse me. Hey, John, could you hit the light for us, please?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Whoa. Okay. The first slide here gives you an overview of the projects that we're proposing. It's basically three separate projects. Do I have a pointer here? I better not play with this.
I don't know.
I don't think there is a.
Yeah, if you can see.
I think that's a.
I'm pretty sure there is one there. Yeah, there we go.
Flashed.
Yep.
This one?
Right.
This one.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll start with the Granite State Shellfish, which is an oyster farm that I own with David Berlinski. We receive monies through the Natural Resources Conservation Service. It's only available for farmers, and it's basically USDA money doing oyster restoration. Okay, so this is not new this year, but it's relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Then the second half an acre is Choice Oysters. That's Kristen's farm, and that's the approximate site of where that restoration will be. This is one that was done by her in 2011. Then here's the big project, 2 acres, that the Nature Conservancy in conjunction with UNH is doing. So basically, and then these are the projects that we did collaboratively with them in 2011. So basically, just real quick to summarize, we're concentrating on the Lamprey River because we've had good success there in every project. There's been some silting and some shell, but we've had good success. We caught a good natural set, and we've had decent survival. We'll do a full assessment of this in 2013. The EPA is coming up, and they're interested in assisting us with that. And the reason we chose these particular sites, here there's a rocky outcrop that has oysters on it, scattered, but they're there. And this is a really nice natural bed that's been there quite a long time, but we mapped it last year. So it's the first time it's entering into the database, basically. But I'm sure that it's been there for decades at least, multiple year classes and that sort of thing. So basically, typically the reefs will occur on the outside bend of these tributary streams. So that's basically the overview. Again, this summarizes a total of 3.5 acres are going to be worked on in the mouth of the Oyster River. This is the characteristics there. There are scattered live oysters in the area. There's a rocky outcrop. And basically, the design, the rationale is to expand between the two areas where there are natural beds. And this is a site, most of them are subtidal, but Kristen's particular area grades from the intertidal into the subtidal. This shows how the shell was put out, some of the natural set, the baby oysters on the shell that were caught. Shells like this were removed from here, and there's some of the natural ones. So basically, we got live oysters we put out and a natural set. This goes over. I won't read all this, but basically, the reef construction is a two-stage process, and that's what the last two slides. We put out a seasoned shell base. It's mostly clam shell. It's been seasoned out of the water, so there's no transmission of disease or any problems from other areas. Then on top of that, we put out live oysters spat on shell that we set in the laboratory and that we've grown on a nursery raft, and some of the good people here have grown on their rafts, the oyster conservationists. This is basically the construction process, and it's pretty good size. We're basically at an industrial scale now. I guess you could say that. Certainly at a full scale. A barge that'll hold upwards to 100 yards of shell. These particular projects were done with shell in bags. We'll probably not use the bags, but use a different spreading technique. But basically, they go to the site in a barge spuds down, and then the shell is deposited in the target area. That will occur in July, so it's probably a 2-day process. It occurs then because the young oysters larvae are in the water column then from the natural spawn, so we want to get that shell in right before they would naturally set, so we can hopefully catch a natural spat set. And we did very well with that last year.
Actually, Ray, the way the barge is lining up, it looks like the last 2 weeks in June.
June, okay,
Yep.
Good. That's a little bit
As
safer,
the window,
really.
it'll be just a couple days in that window.
Okay. Because we know that they start spawning in probably late June and go all the way on into August. Okay, the remote setting, this is us mimicking what happens in nature in tanks at the lab, and we basically bring in shell, put it in trays, cages, or whatever, several different methods, clean them up. Then we have volunteers that help us with this process. We put them in large tanks like here. Then we buy oyster larvae from a hatchery in Maine that have been providing us with a very high quality product for about 5 years. We put, that's about, right there is 4 million larvae. So you're looking at 4 million baby oysters. You don't see 4 million baby oysters that can fit in your hand. And in case you're wondering, they're $1,000 a million at that point. So they go up a little bit. I know some of you like them on the half shell. So that would be $1 million. Anyways, and this is our raft. They stay there a couple months. They get to this size typically, a little spat on shell. Then we put them in the boat and take them boatload after boatload to spread them out onto the reef. And that will occur in September or thereabout. And that's the end of the show. Okay. That's the process. Any
Thank you.
questions? Yeah.
Commissioners have any questions?
I have just one
Yes.
question. On the, I guess it's CSS1 and the next one,
Yes.
will those ever be commercial?
No.
No, because it's too close to plant?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Not in the foreseeable future. No. I mean, that's the way we prefer. We try to concentrate on the closed waters. There's good food supply, and they're not going to be harvested.
Okay, thank you.
And so the permits for this year are to basically continue to try to get the reefs growing in the 2 acres that you were working in last year.
No, it's adjacent to it. See, there's a little bit of overlap.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any information on recruitment at the ones that you did last year?
Yeah, that's, what was it?
Yeah, we did spectacularly well at those other 2 reefs.
Ray, if you don't
besides-
mind, could you go up to the
Yeah, sure.
podium? Thank
Just a
you.
little bit about, in this area, the reason why we're coming back is because we did very, very well there. This is the best recruitment we've had. We got about 600,000 oysters on those reefs. We put down like about half that, the other half just came naturally. So that's been our best results, have been in Newmarket. In the Squamscott, where we worked this past year, in some of those areas, it was a smaller area, so we didn't get as many, but we got our densest set, which was over 100 oysters in a square meter, the size of that table, which is really encouraging for working in this area, and that's what brought us back there.
Yeah.
So the conditions are good, and we're taking advantage of that. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Make audience questions.
Sure.
Your raft, you said last 2 weeks in June. At low tide, there's a lot of traffic in that channel. In 1st of July, I'm not sure about the end of June. Is your raft going to be in any jeopardy because of the low traffic?
Well, it won't. There may be some moving around because it really won't be able to work at low tide due to there's not a lot of draft on the barge, but the channel is narrow, especially where it grades up to the side there. They won't be able to do that at low tide. The one in the middle, they might, but the barge itself the width of it is much less than the width of the channel, and boat wakes. It's not gonna matter. And the truth is, it's nice to get the people to be interested in what's going on.
So you encourage people to come and look like with the boat?
Absolutely.
Because we had our little ones hanging from our dock, so
You
we
did,
want,
okay.
so we want to like
Okay.
kayak out and see them.
Thank you. Well, this year. This is where they're going to go.
All right.
So you folks who are working for us in around the Lamprey River, they're going to have a very short commute.
We always name them.
Yeah. It's a great project. And if I have just one last thing to say, I would thank the town of Newmarket and this commission for helping support last year. We struggled with funding last year. The town of Newmarket stepped up, provided us a little bit of funding, but it went a long way. And we leveraged that a lot to this year's project. So, just to keep this going, and this year looks great. Next year, we're going to just keep going from there. But it's the little bits of funding at the right time is so crucial. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that.
I know last year you let us know when the when the specific dates were, so that people could come out and observe. If you would do that again this year when it gets closer to that time, we would appreciate it.
Yep.
For sure.
Great.
Thank you. And I assume you know with the process with the minimum impact expedited, sign them, and the clerks are holding our checks, and yep. Fantastic. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Drew, do we need a motion to sign these?
Yes. So we need a motion. Well, first, is there any further discussion of these wetlands permit applications? Hearing none, then we need a motion for the chair to sign them.
Make the motion that the chair sign the expedited?
Yes.
Expedited permits, and so they can continue on with the great restoration work.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will sign these after our meeting. The town offices are closed tomorrow and Monday, so they won't actually get to the town clerk until Tuesday at the soonest and Wednesday at the latest. So how about if I'll send you an email to let you know when they've gotten there.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, we're going to rename it Oyster Town. This is where it's going on.
Thank you.
Oyster Market. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we got, you got one. No, right? Kid kind of left, she was forgetting hers, so we'll bring her crazy next time.
I usually have a couple. Okay. So the next item on our agenda that I'd like to talk about this evening is Mr. Walter Cheney sent us a letter requesting to be on the agenda. We have said, sure, please come. I've sent the letter out to all of you, and I'm sure you've all had a chance to read it. It I've asked Kathy to put it in our public records. I guess that's it. If Mr. Cheney would like to come up and speak.
Sure.
that would be
We're talking about the proposed lots right now and participation of the Conservation Commission, is that
Yes.
the right
And,
subject?
and Mr. Cheney, if you could,
Okay,
at the podium, that
okay.
way you can be heard better. Thank you.
They, we've met with the Nature Conservancy and what was, well, first of all, out to Moody Point, Lot 13, which has been before everybody for a number of years, 5 or 6 years, that it was originally going to be given to the Nature Conservancy approximately about 69 acres, and we had to retain about 3 acres because they didn't want to be involved with the homeowners that abutted that particular area of the lot. And I can show you a plan that was the original proposal. This is what was the original proposal. And the Nature Conservancy was going to own within 20 feet above the high water mark. And what they were going to do is they were going to own everything that you perceive as the marsh. Okay? And it was about 69 acres of land. This little piece here was a lot that butted the houses. And that was originally going to be given to the Levelland Association, which is the association that owns this property here. And during that process, Diane Hardy came to the conclusion that Lot 13 was open space, which the courts have since determined that is not true. And so so this thing, the association ended up questioning the ownership of Lot 13. We had to go to court. We've been through all these processes. So now I've clear title to the property, and we're back to a position where we can sell a property, develop it, or do whatever we so choose. My interest is still in trying to donate as much as the land to the Nature Conservancy as I can. And so I've got to switch and try to pull together another plan here. I'd anticipated we'd be at a table sitting around it, but I'll make that work. This is primary.
If you could, Mr. Cheney, to the extent possible,
Okay.
it just makes your voice easier to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the maybe I can.
Yeah, sure.
We get.
Yeah, we can open that up.
Oh, okay.
Up there, does that help?
Yep. We got anything to stick it? This work.
Yeah, over here.
Here, I got some Scott. Oh,
Yeah, tape would work.
okay. This is Cushing Road coming in here. This was, if you knew where Lynn Jennings used to live, this is where Lynn Jennings used to live, right here. Come out here, you continue on, and you come to the, what we all consider Moody Point. So this property has been vacant for about 26 years. So at the present time, what we've discussed with the Nature Conservancy is they would take all the land up to the high water mark, the orange. Okay? The green is the 150-foot setback mark. Okay? The conception, and this is only to talk about conception, the conception is either in deed or conservation easement or something, we would do what would amount to be 105 feet. The Nature Conservancy is going to take the first 20 feet. For conversation, Newmarket Conservation would take an easement or title to the land of 105 feet. And the adjacent 25 feet would be in the house lots, but there's a 25-foot setback on a building code. So at the end of the day, we'd still be the 125 feet from the water prior to any building, okay? So that's the conception, is to see if the Conservation Commission, so that there was a second party between the Nature Conservancy and the homeowners. So, any questions for anybody? Anybody?
I have a question.
Yep.
How many homes do you plan to build?
That's a little bit up in the air at the moment, but anywhere from 4 to 5, maybe maximum 6. And part of that is the way the Nature Conservancy really gets a lot of their funding is, like, my plan is, which it was before, that I'm donating the whole thing, okay? So then what they do is they get it appraised for as high as they can, and then they can sort of peddle that to the government. They then turn around and take this property and this asset, and let's just say it's worth $1 million, then the government will give them like $1 million for this property, and they put it into another little system that they have. So there's part of what we're possibly doing is some of those lots or units, whatnot, will go to the Nature Conservancy to build the value on the land that they will be receiving, so that they'll have the greatest amount of matching funds. So while there may be 6 plus or minus lots, there may be only 4 lots to be built upon.
So let's say hypothetically there are 4 lots. Would it be individual housing on that, or would there be condos or townhouses?
At this point, I would suspect there would be single-family houses, but they could turn into duplexes. They could, I'm not sure exactly what point. What we're trying to do is figure out who wants to participate, and how do they best want to, how do we best create a conception of what the players are, and how we could best develop this in the most environmental way that we can.
I guess can you build there?
Pardon?
Can you build structures there? Isn't that environmental sensitive area there?
Oh, sure, no, it's not the area we're talking about. I mean, it's all buildable. Just to give you go back 26 years ago, okay? the land that we're proposing to go to the Nature Conservancy is the exact same acreage and size of the land that we had originally planned to have that lot consist of. So, since that time, this particular lot has gone through a lot of transitions, and it's gone from 60 acres to 72 acres. So there's been additional 12 acres added to the so-called wetlands in the 150-foot shoreline setback.
I guess another question follow-up is, shouldn't you procedurally at least go before the planning board to see if these can be built before coming to us?
We've been in conversation with we've written letters to the planning board and so on and so forth, but they haven't responded to us, so that...
I mean, like, writing a letter is one thing, but have you filed anything to?
That's going to be done, we're in the process of I think we'll be before the planning board next month. But we really can't go to the planning board until we know, like, for example, if the Conservation Commission isn't interested in participating in owning this, okay, then we need to find somebody else, okay? Because to make it all work for the Nature Conservancy, they want a third party. Now, I can go back and be the third party again, and I've done that before, but, so, I may just retain ownership to that, and that'll accomplish their goals. So it doesn't have to be conservation, doesn't have to be, it could be anyone. They just don't want to deal with homeowners. They want somebody else that will be in between them.
I guess my main concern is you really don't have conceptually or any concrete idea of actually with townhouses going there, condos, it's, I mean, how many units are gonna be going in there? I mean, that's a question I asked before, and you weren't sure, correct?
Let's deal with the maximum. Let's say 6.
6
Okay.
lots or 6 homes?
One and the same. They amount to the same.
Well, are you saying if you one lot, you could put a townhouse on it?
What you have to understand, there can never be any more than 103 units at Moody Point. Okay, that's the maximum amount of units. So if you don't use, if you don't use them over here, you can use them over here. In other words, it's a maximum of 103 units. And so that's the maximum units that'll ever be built at Moody Point.
And currently, how many are there?
Oh, boy. Maybe 90.
So there's a big difference between 90 and...
But keep in mind, they're scheduled to be somewhere else. They can't be here. In other words, the only units that can go out here are the units that I designate to go out there. Other than that, nothing else can go out there.
Will it be serviced by the sewage,
Yes, it will.
town sewage, or is that,
Town sewer.
okay.
Yeah.
Town water?
Probably
You
RT.
have your, Moody Point has its own water system, is that
Yeah,
correct?
and we probably do wells on these, in this location, unless we work out something with the association they want us to tie in. But I doubt that, listening
Okay.
to the audience, I'm not sure that's, so,
Do I understand this right, that there was a question about the original use of that property as being open space, correct?
that was raised by Diane Harding, and then backed up with Laura Spector. Okay?
Okay.
And both those,
The original planning board subdivision, did that mention open space at all?
absolutely not.
Okay. Is there open space already at Moody Point?
Absolutely, yes, there is.
Okay, because I understood that there was open space at Moody Point.
And what you have to look at is, I can give you all a quick education on it if you want.
Well, I know it's been going back and
Okay.
forth for years. That's not the...
Without the education, Tina Netto, the judge, ruled that Lot 13 was an independent lot of record, okay? If you go back to your zoning ordinance and look up and see what a subdivision means, which, you know, on a lot means that you to get to be an individual lot of record, you had to go through the subdivision. And so, once you are approved as a lot of record, then your rights are that you can sell the property, you can build on it, or you can re-subdivide it. It's black and white, it's not gray. And she did rule absolutely unconditionally that Lot 13 is an independent lot of record.
Okay. My feelings, as far as the conservation, we've done properties in the past.
Yep.
And part of the reason I got on the Conservation Commission was to make sure that properties that we invest in were open to the public. I don't know, it came up on another property, Fox Hollow, years ago, a similar project to this. Personally, I don't see the value of the Newmarket conservation. This person
Yep.
investing in 100 feet spaghetti lot,
Yep.
if you will.
Yep.
I guess it does protect, you know, a buffer, but my interest in property is to keep it open for people to use as trails, hunting, fishing.
Sure.
Nature walking, if you
Yep.
will. I'm not sure that I'm interested in the spaghetti lot, but that's for the whole
Sure.
commission to figure
Yep.
out. So thank you.
Jessica, your question?
Well, I have lots of questions, but I'm
Good.
still I'm a little confused. So the lot is a lot of record, which gives you the right to do what you want with it.
That's correct.
Within zoning, planning rules, et cetera. But we had other correspondence from you talking, I know this is a separate issue, but it's sort of related, talking about the whole buffer issue.
Yep.
Which made reference to the fact that, it seemed to make reference to the fact that part of this lot was open space, and there were obligations on the part of the association to maintain it as open space. So could you clarify, were you talking about this specific lot?
No,
It's a different lot?
different lot.
Okay.
This lot has nothing to do with the Moody Point Community Association. This was siphoned off in all the records, and in other words, Judge Netto also clarified that and said that this was not part of the declaration of the Moody Point Community Association. So if you can envision, this hand is Moody Point with a declaration and bylaws, and this lot's out here all by itself. Okay?
Just for clarification, further clarification on that point, this is not the lot that we're talking about potentially planting trees. Was that something that came up in this correspondence?
From the storm damage.
From the storm damage?
This is not that lot.
Another
not
place,
that. Okay.
another place. Yeah.
That's a different lot.
So all the-
Different lot. No, it's on Lot 4.
On lot 4?
No, it's Lot 13.
And Lot
You sent a letter to the Wabareon Homeowners Association, planting trees on Lot 13. Now, answer their question.
Maybe I can, you said you had two questions for us tonight. One was Lot 13,
Right.
and one is
Yeah.
the trees.
So-
Maybe she could address Lot 13 first, and then concentrate on the
So
trees
the only
after.
thing for Lot 13 then is the question of its future, whether, in our case, we're interested in taking an easement on it. Is that
Correct.
is that correct?
Correct.
So we've isolated that?
Yep.
Okay. And so you made mention of the fact that you would donate the land to the Nature Conservancy.
Correct.
Does the same hold for the parcel that you're interested in the Conservation Commission
Yes.
taking over?
Yes.
Okay.
And in other words, I'm back to the same position I was when I got in the last mess I got into, okay? It's The Nature Conservancy wants a third party to own the land between them and, okay? And so we tried to create all that, got it approved in one night, and we were off and running. Nature Conservancy would own the land in 30 days, and it would have been done, and I would have saved a few $100,000, and people behind me would have saved a few $100,000. But that isn't how it happened. So the reality is, we have to deal with what we have to deal with now. So what we're trying to figure out to create this buffer again so I'm doing it now instead of when I go to the planning board. So I'm just trying to figure out, get my ducks in order as to what works. The Nature Conservancy, they vacillate back and forth. If I come back to the Nature Conservancy tomorrow and you guys are definitely out, I'll bet you 10 to 1, they'll take it all the way up to the green line, okay? Okay? But if they don't, then I'm going to find somebody else. It's that simple. And so from the conservation point of view, it's what you feel about conservation and feel is this worthwhile doing and so on and so forth. All the logistics that I got to deal with with how many houses and all of that and so on and so forth, that's down the road. We need to figure out who the players are and who's interested in trying to protect and take care of what.
Is there any potential access point for this land for?
No, we don't, and Bruce, we wouldn't want anybody walking out here either, okay? What we're trying to do is accomplish what we tried to do 26 years ago, is to protect this and so on and so forth, okay? And we had it all done 5 years ago, and the town decided it didn't work for them. So since it didn't work for them, we're here today with a different plan, and we're trying to make it as close to what we had back then as we can, okay? The goal is to try to protect this to the best of our capabilities.
Could you remind me, so how wide? You said that there would be 25 feet that would be restricted on whatever lots are created, but under the ownership of the new landowners. There would be a strip that you would like the Conservation Commission to steward.
105 feet.
That would be the strip that you're talking about for the Conservation Commission.
Yep. And I wouldn't want walking on it. Well, really what we want is I believe everybody in this room probably is aware that people at Moody Point, one person went out and cut 350 trees on this lot 13. Another one cut about 60. And when we talk about trees, I'm talking some trees this big, all the way down to this big, okay? But 350 of them from this big to this big, okay? And so we have a serious problem of people going out there and doing this. We need somebody to monitor that and keep in track. The theory was that if the town was responsible, that if the town owned this, nobody would dare cut that because the town is out there and they're involved and so on and so forth. So that's why the theory would be that having it be controlled in town might be more powerful and people would not take the advantage of going out and cutting. And then what the Nature Conservancy came up with was, based on the old liquor laws, was we ought to have them vested with view easements. So we tried to do that, and that didn't work for anybody. So we don't want the view easements. We were told that let's put the view easements in because they're going to cut them, they're cutting out there illegally now. Can you imagine 350 trees illegally, got away with it? And whereas if those homeowners knew that they were, on the rest of Moody Point, it's all managed and looked at, and there's rules and regulations. This was the only place that the illegal cutting was here, because there were no view easements. Where they had view easements, it all worked. Where they didn't have view easements, it got butchered.
Can you tell me where those trees were cut on that map there?
It doesn't show on this particular map.
Oh, I mean, 350 trees. I mean, what did they, cut them down and log them, or just cut them down and leave them?
Yeah, no, they cut them down and logged them.
And who did that?
Are we talking about it?
No, it's just, no, I meant,
Where?
no, can we just, no, just, so, they cut them down and log them?
They cut
Unless
down,
they or some person or some,
yes, one person, now keep in mind, I told you there was this big,
right?
all the way to this big.
Yeah.
Okay? This big is somewhere under 20 trees, okay, of mine. But, okay, and those were all logged. They were cut, the trees were hauled off, and the stumps were bulldozed into the wetlands on Lot 13. We had to have DES come out, and after a big harangue, they finally got the homeowner to pay to take them out, but no penalties to the homeowner. And so, you know,
You had one homeowner cut down 350 trees?
yeah, and no penalties at all. He broke every law that you could imagine.
This happened over a period of time, or?
Oh, maybe 3 years, 2 years.
I would suggest we try to stick to the current and the future
Sure,
rather
sure.
than the past.
Yeah.
I guess my perspective on this, Mr. Cheney, would be, I'm interested in conserving as much land as possible.
Okay.
Practically speaking, owning a strip is somewhere between suboptimal and not practical. I would like to see public access on any, you know, if the Conservation Commission is going to be involved, me personally,
Yeah.
it's public property, and therefore I would like to see public
Yeah.
access. That's been a
Yeah. Yeah.
point that we've
That's why I'm here.
consistent on.
That's
Right.
why I'm here.
Right.
Okay.
With all of that in mind, your proposal as it stands is not of particular interest to me, but I would be willing to continue to talk about it and see if we can figure something out. I don't want to do that now, obviously, but I think it would be safe to say the Conservation Commission shares your goal of conserving as much of that property as possible.
Okay.
In an ideal world, the whole thing. How we get there,
Okay.
I don't know. And I
Let me
don't
ask you a
can get
question.
there.
Where were you, where was the Conservation Commission when the rest of the town was, you know, doing what they did? You know?
I don't understand the
Well, what I'm saying is, 5 years ago, which you probably weren't even on the board,
I was not at that point. no.
okay? So all I'm saying is, the original goal was this would have been all, this was the plan, okay? This was the plan, everything was gonna be protected, but, and even that 2.5 acres, but the bottom line is, the town turned that plan down after they approved it, okay? They went the other direction, and so now.
Again, I can't change the past.
Had this board went to the town, you know, and done something, maybe we could have gone in a different direction, but we didn't. So we really can't complain about what happened then, and I hate to bring it up because, but I'm just pointing out that if the Conservation Commission really cares about protecting this, then they need to fight for it. That's all. That doesn't mean you should be taking, if this doesn't fit for you to take this 105 feet, it would be better to have somebody that could be a better manager for it. Because really what we're looking for somebody to do is to take an interest in it and probably walk it, in other words, let's say the Conservation Commission owned this. And what we would probably like is some sort of a commitment that this property would be walked by a Conservation Commission member, at least, I'm just going to say every night.
Annually.
Yeah.
At least annually.
Okay.
All the easements that we currently have, the property is monitored at least annually.
Okay. And I might say at least twice a year here, only because, again, we've had a history of people going and cutting and doing things. But, so that's what we're really looking for. And then because it's the town and they got the code enforcement officer and so on and so forth, they get the staff and the people to administrate it and take care of it. And if people are violating whatever, in other words, any houses that go in here are going to have, I raised my hand since I participated and helped draw the documents at Moody Point. It would never happen again. Those people move in there, they don't care about the environment. We thought if you bought into living in an environmental area, you'd take some care about it. We've learned that that's not right. We needed to put more teeth and more rules and stuff into our documents that we didn't do. It was a learning process for us. And so, but we're aware of that. So all of these, whether they're 4 houses or 6 houses, however many houses are, whatever goes out there, they're going to be so restricted and covenants that they won't be able to touch a twig out there unless they get different people's approvals. And so we will have a control over it. But we're just looking for a third party to administrate it beyond that.
Yeah, Sam?
I'm not really interested in that strip of land, but you said if it doesn't work here, that you can go right to the Nature Conservancy tomorrow, and they'd probably accept that, correct? And
Well, I said
would they be their watchdog?
I said they could. There's other conservation groups, around that may take a big interest in this. And so we will explore that. And I'll explore that with the Nature Conservancy. And but all I am saying is, they may say, it's been 5 years since the last time they were going to be given this, and they lost it because they didn't take what was being offered to them, okay? And in other words, you have to understand, the original deed and the original proposal was for the whole 72 acres. And they said, no, we won't take that, okay? And so then we went and created that plan, and we spent 5 years fighting over it. So we're still back here trying to give what we can to the Nature Conservancy, okay?
Understood.
And maybe we're all a little bit smarter today, and maybe they will say, okay, how do we make it work? So that's where we are. So you were the second step in this process. Nature Conservancy was first. They're trying to analyze how we can best do this. You guys will either be in or out, and then if you're out, then we'll go from there. But we need to know what the feeling of the board and where you want to go.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple things, just to get it on the record. I agree with you, Drew. I think our interest is in preserving or conserving as much of that as is possible.
Yep.
That what you're proposing for the Conservation Commission, I know you've already heard this, but to steward isn't very practical. However, I do appreciate that you have come early in the planning process. I actually think that's a good thing, because it does give the chance to talk about options for that. including the possibility of arranging things so that there might be public access. So for instance, if there's a cluster or something like that.
No, there will not be
And the
public.
reason for that is?
Yeah, because we do not want any activity on the marsh. Okay? And just like if we take people out there, okay? In other words, when we created all the trails at Moody Point, they were all done very scientifically and animal-wise and people-wise, and bushes with thorns in them, and everything was created to put people where we wanted them.
Okay.
Okay, I would say that the trails at Moody Point are one thing that did work. And in other words, if you go out and walk the trails at Moody Point, you'll find that very few people leave the trails because they walk the trails and they're satisfied, okay? And because they get satisfied because they can go down the dock and feeling touching the water without going somewhere else. And so a lot of thought and effort was put into that, and I do think that works.
Okay, so let's assume for the moment that there might not be any public access, just, there are a couple things still that might make it interesting to us. One being that if he donates it, then we also can use it as match for future potential land acquisition projects, which would be extremely valuable to us because our funding is so limited. However, I think he's right that landowners will, go on, encroach onto the property. That just seems to be the matter of course wherever you are. So there would be a lot of policing work that needs to go on, which isn't exactly what our office is either. This land, I believe, is already under the protection of the Shoreline Protection Act, right?
Yes.
So there is already a policing agent in place besides code enforcement officer here in Newmarket, but also the DES. So it's not necessary, I think, that a third party be a policing agent. So what I think a good course of action would be to go back and talk to the Nature Conservancy and see if they are now, 5 years later, interested in taking the whole piece. And if they're not, perhaps come back and talk to us again.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
They don't have the option of taking the whole piece.
Not the
that
whole
they
piece, but what you're talking
The
about.
new whole piece.
So the
Yeah.
69 acres plus the 19 acres that we're talking about here. And then perhaps coming back to talk. I think what you said was probably similar. We're interested. It's not really particularly interesting as it stands, but if everything else falls through, perhaps you should talk to us again. But I do think that it's an important strip of land for protecting the marsh, and so it would be a shame to see it go into development as well. And, to reiterate, the idea of having a match for other land conservation is very appealing to me personally. So I don't know where that leaves us, but that was my 2 cents.
No, that's good.
Any further comments?
I would just say, go back and talk to the Nature Conservancy and see what they say, see if they'll take it.
Yeah, I think what I've heard from the commission is if it's a strip with no public access, then we are probably not interested.
Fine.
If we can figure out a way to preserve more and in addition potentially provide public access, then we'd be more interested in being involved.
And did I hear right, just like the Nature Conservancy, if we were able to mastermind, I'm just a idea guy, but if you got the piece of land and it had a value of a house on it, and let's just say that this property was worth $200,000 that you were going to receive, does that all of a sudden change your interest?
He's talking now in terms of the value for matching, right?
Yeah. I mean, in this, I don't know, in this financial age, with resources being what they are, and land value being what it is, it may be worth considering that as an option to protect future areas in town, as having a match for it.
That's definitely a plus.
Yeah, that's a plus.
But what we're being offered, to me, what we're being offered is property that's already in a protected area, the 175-foot setback. It seems to me that you're going, here's some property you can have that's already protected by DES. Why do I want to buy it when it's already done? Or why do I want to take ownership of it?
Right, right.
The plus is if we do take ownership, we can wager, not wager, but we
Leverage.
can use that to gain access to more funding as it's a value, because it is a value. I think it's something we have to go over and think really hard about. I don't want to get into any kind of back and forth match with it, but there's some good pluses and there's a few minuses there. The big minus, I think, is public access to town-owned property. That's always been one of my big gripes with town-owned properties. If you can't use it, it's really not worth anything. I don't want to be the landlord to take care of people. I don't think that's what we're here for. We're here to conserve property, not to appease landowners. So much to say. So I think we really need to look hard at this before we jump to any decisions here.
I would agree.
Okay, so what I'm leaving with, that there's not much interest, there's maybe a sliver of if we have no other solutions, come back and talk to you again, maybe.
I think that's true for as it's currently proposed.
Yep.
You know, it's not completely dead.
No, I understand, but it allows me to move ahead, and that's all we're trying to do, is to figure out where we can go and what we can do. So I'll start talking with Nature Conservancy and see where they want to head now. And if I see another role for the commission, I will definitely be back on that.
No, great, thank you.
All right, now we're going to talk about the
Tree.
Lot
these were your
4, is it?
Go back to the.
Thank you. So, if you'll allow me.
Sure.
As far as I know, the Conservation Commission has no legal interest or ability to act on Lot 4. Other than if there were a wetlands permit, then we would be able to weigh in on it. Beyond that, I don't think we have any opinion that carries any weight.
Fine, then I won't waste your time or my time. And
Fair enough.
that, everybody satisfied with that, or do you want to discuss it a little bit, or there's a buffer that we all worked hard to create that's been blown down, and the rules and regulations of the association say that it needs to be replaced. They don't want to do it. The town, in their great wisdom, made me give them the right to go in there and enforce those laws. Made me do it 27 years ago. And today, they have no interest in going in there. Okay? Somehow that doesn't really make sense to me, but that's okay. It's an environment, it's a thing we try to do. Now the houses are exposed right out to the water. I have pictures, but no need of looking at them. And the town has all the capabilities and required me to put it in the covenants, that the town could step in and enforce the association to do whatever the association bylaws say to do, okay? And I was told by the building inspector today, he really didn't think he was going to do anything. You're saying you don't think you have any role to play, and that's fine. That just shows that next time the town tells me that I got to do something, I'll use this as an example. You know, you won't back up what you make us do, and you weren't even around then. I know. Go ahead.
All I can say is, to the best of my knowledge,
Yep, no,
we have legal counsel here. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Conservation Commission doesn't own any sort of easement on that property. We have no legal interest in it.
No,
Therefore, we have no legal standing.
No,
I don't know what to say other than that.
I agree with this as a board, but you certainly could, as a board, go to the building inspector and tell him he thinks, you know, as a Conservation Commission, that he should enforce whatever rules and regulation that are there for him to do. In other words, the rules and regulations say the buffer should be built, replenished, okay? And even the building inspector agrees with this theory. The theory that...
Mr. Chairman, you said you weren't going to talk about Lot 4, so could we go back and continue and finish on Lot 13?
I think we're done on 13.
I have something to say in response to Mr. Cheney, if that's all right.
Well, yeah, I guess I would just like to say, I suppose the Conservation Commission could draft a letter.
Fine.
In order to do that, we would need to do a site visit or something of that nature. We'd be open to
Great.
doing something along that line.
My recommendation is that, you know, and it may have to wait till the snow's gone, but you know, but next time that the ground is walkable, you know, and I'm not saying it isn't walkable now, but that if we could go out there and look at it, and at least the Conservation Commission that represents supposedly caring about our environment, that to see what's out there and what's proposed. But what I was starting to tell you what's proposed is nature will take care of itself, and the trees are going to grow back up.
How about we save this discussion for
Right.
another time?
Great.
Sorry.
Perfect. I'm happy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Badger?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll try not to take as long as Mr. Cheney. There are lots of exaggeration and amnesia, and I'll try to correct the situation. I can tell you that as chairman of the planning board, and Mr. Cheney talked about 5 years ago, as chairman of the planning board, I sat with Mr. Cheney's representatives in 2007, which is more than 5 years ago, and with Diane Hardy and with Mr. Cheney's lawyer, and we made, subject to the approvals of the MPCA and the planning board, we made an arrangement, an agreement on the division of Lot 13, where the majority of it would be given to the Nature Conservancy, and the land behind the Lumberland Homeowners Association would be given a conservation easement. And it is my understanding, Mr. Cheney was on apparently a fishing trip in Canada, and his lawyer said, I will cover this with Mr. Cheney. I think this is a good arrangement and it'll work for everybody. And it was reported to me that when Mr. Cheney returned from his fishing trip and he heard about the agreement with all the subjects on it, he terminated the attorney. So, also, Mr. Cheney has said he wanted to talk to the Conservation Commission, he wanted to talk to the Nature Conservancy, the building inspector, and so on. The only people he hasn't talked about talking to are the homeowners. He's never suggested tonight or at any other time that he would meet with the Moody Point Community Association, who are abutters, and the Lumberland Creek Homeowners Association, who are butters immediately behind this narrow strip. He apparently doesn't want to talk about this. Just to start off, my name is John Badger. I'm not very happy right now. I live on Cushing Road, and I'm here as a member of the Board of Directors of the Moody Point Community Association. I want to refer this committee to RSA 674-21-A, which says, an applicant's statement of intent to restrict development submitted with or contained in an application which is subsequently approved shall be deemed a condition of approval. So we want to talk about two things. One is developing Lot 13, and secondly, planting trees on Lot 13. You have in your information packet the letter from Mr. Cheney that he wrote to the Lumberland Homeowners Association. And you also obviously have the email that he sent to you about Lot 13.
Mm-hmm.
We can go back to May 23rd, 1985, Planning Board minutes, where the Moody Point Company representative presented a review of the Moody Point, quote, management plan for the protection of Moody Point. In this plan, it states that a 150-foot buffer has been, not will be, but has been established along Lumberland Creek. And that's what we're talking about here, Lumberland Creek. It's prohibited to all traffic, all motor vehicles, and all pedestrians. It further states that the Moody Point property bordered by Lamprey River, Great Bay, and Lumberland Creek salt marsh is one of the most pristine and unaltered wetland wildlife habitats in the Great Bay system. Not my words, Mr. Cheney's words. We can go back to February 26, 1985 Planning Board minutes, a 150-foot buffer along sensitive areas of the bay. The Planning Board minutes of November 24, 1987, where Mr. Cheney's representative said lots 4, 11, 12, and 13 are open space. It is important to remember the RSA. I quoted earlier. It is clear that the Planning Board minutes from 1985, 86, 87 were relied on by Mr. Cheney and his representatives in this process to approve the Moody Point project. Whether implicit, implied, or part of the actual documentation, representations were made regarding Lot 13 as open space, not to be developed. The Planning Board at that time relied on these representations and based their approvals of Moody Point project upon them. These earlier Planning Board minutes are further substantiated by several lawsuits that Mr. Cheney referred to earlier. They have resulted from Mr. Cheney's desire to change the terms and conditions of the approvals made so long ago. The MPCA challenged his title to Lot 13. In a March 3, 2011 decision, which was Judge Nadeau, she said, quote, Mr. Cheney clearly intended the lot to remain undeveloped and intended to preserve the land from regular human access, end quote. Mr. Cheney was awarded title to the property, but securing title did not change the intent of the Planning Board approvals so long ago. Earlier, Mr. Cheney had applied to the Planning Board to subdivide Lot 13. This was ultimately denied, and Mr. Cheney appealed the decision of the Planning Board. The appeal was held in abeyance until the title question was resolved. After the title was awarded, Mr. Cheney's appeal of the Planning Board decision was denied, and the lot could not be subdivided and could not be developed. I'm trying to find my glasses so I can't read here. Hang on a second.
I understand, and as I advance in age, I understand more and more.
There we go.
Believe me.
After Mr. Cheney was awarded title to Lot 13, he initiated litigation against the town of Newmarket, that would be Diane Hardy, and the Planning Board's attorney alleging, quote, slander of title. After a lot of time, expense, and effort on the part of the defendants, the judge dismissed Mr. Cheney's lawsuits on December 31st of 2012. Judge Marguerite Wegelin presiding. And I quote from that decision, Lot 13 is entirely undeveloped land and is environmentally sensitive, end quote. Next quote, given the regulation in place at the time, as well as the representations made by Mr. Cheney at the time, Lot 13 was intended and required to remain unbuildable open space. Another quote, it is clear from the history of the development of the property, the bylaws and the minutes of the planning board meetings with Mr. Cheney intended to convey Lot 13 to an entity which would preserve it in its natural state. Finally, last quote from this decision. The court noted that Mr. Cheney clearly intended the lot to remain undeveloped and intended to preserve the land from regular human access. These are not my words. These are from the decision of the judge. I could go on citing Mr. Cheney's representations regarding Lot 13 as open space, in conservation, and undevelopable. I could show you where Mr. Cheney states that he has included Lot 13 in his will to protect it. I can show you where he states that Lot 13 is the most environmentally valuable piece of ground in the entire Great Bay Estuary. In his book, Have Hammer Will Bang, right? He says he wants to balance open space and make it a sanctuary. It's his book. Rather, I'd like to quote you an email that Mr. Cheney sent to Dan Vincent August 10, 2011, where he says, quote, this seems to be an easier process than applying for a building permit that I have no intention of building since my goal is to transfer the property to the Nature Conservancy. We need to consider this statement with the two documents you have in there, the ones I mentioned. That's Mr. Cheney's 13113 email to you, to the chairman, and the letter to the Lumberland Homeowners Association. In the email to your chairman, Mr. Cheney misstates the planning board action regarding Lot 13 subdivision. He simply failed to meet the conditions of the approval. There was no town denial. It is clear that Mr. Cheney still wishes to develop Lot 13, as his surveyors have been hard at work this week out there walking on the property where he said he wanted to prevent it from human access. He wants to develop the property and transfer 50 acres to the Nature Conservancy. Now we turn to Mr. Cheney's letter of January 19th to the Lumberland Homeowners Association, where he states the following. He wants to plant two rows of evergreens 5 to 6 feet high along the entire boundary between Lot 13 and the Lumberland Homeowners Association property. Quote, cutting a 10-foot swath along the boundary to transfer equipment and trees. Quote, I was unable to transfer the property to the Nature Conservancy. Lot 13 in its entirety will be put on the market. It's interesting, and we're not sure what his intentions are, because these statements seem to be contradictory. I trust Mr. Cheney is aware of the requirements of full disclosure if he puts the property on the market. I also trust Mr. Cheney is well-versed on RSA 482A1 regarding protection of shorelands, RSA 482A3 dredge and excavation permits, and 482A4 100 feet within the high tide. So let me summarize. So what are our expectations tonight of this meeting regarding Lot 13 in the near future? We look forward to joining with this committee and the MPCA, Moody Point Community Association, the Lumberland Homeowners Association, and the Planning Department and the Town of Newmarket in preventing Mr. Cheney from developing or building on Lot 13. After all, since 1984, Mr. Cheney has promised to keep Lot 13 open and undeveloped. We expect the Conservation Commission to join with DES, the code enforcement officer in the town, in preventing Mr. Cheney from entering Lot 13 with equipment, workers, and trees within 150 feet of high tide. Many properties that back up and abut on Lot 13 are within approximately 100 feet of high tide. We fully expect Mr. Cheney to comply with his assertions and his representations to keep Lot 13 as open space and not developed. After all, the original approvals of the Moody Point development made in the 1980s were based on his representations. When and if Mr. Cheney goes before the planning board with his new subdivision plan, we will be there. And we expect the Conservation Commission to be there too. When and if Mr. Cheney goes before the ZBA, we will be there. And we expect the Conservation Commission to be there also. When and if Mr. Cheney files for a dredge and fill permit to plant trees on Lot 13, we will be there to oppose his plan, and we expect the Conservation Commission to join us. When and if Mr. Cheney seeks a building permit for Lot 13, we'll be there, and we expect the Conservation Commission to join us in opposition. We want the Lot 13 issue to be resolved, but be assured we will not go away. We intend to protect Lot 13 in the same manner that Mr. Cheney committed to do so long ago. We would welcome the opportunity to meet with Mr. Cheney, the Conservation Commission, the Nature Conservancy, the MPCA, of course, the Lumberland Homeowners Association, and the Town of Newmarket to reach agreement on the disposal of Lot 13 in a manner and under terms and conditions that meets the needs of all parties, including the abutters. We challenge Mr. Cheney to sit down with us and sit down with these parties and bring the Lot 13 issue to a reasonable and satisfactory conclusion. If he's interested in doing this, we are too, but we're not going away. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
I don't have any.
Was I clear? Yes.
Thank you so much, and it's not a question for you. It's a question for Mr. Cheney. Would you, no, I haven't asked my question yet. Would you be willing to sit down with all parties involved?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just for the
How about
record.
next week?
Absolutely, for the record, okay? This is the only person in this town.
Now, let's not point. No, but you need to step up to the,
That's
Yep.
talked to me in 5 to 8 years, okay?
Oh, come on.
No one in the town of Newmarket will respond to my letters, meet with me, or anything else. That's documented.
but you're willing to sit down with all parties involved.
I would love to sit down with Moody Point.
I'm saying, though, all parties involved and get this taken care of.
Town attorney's here, right here, okay? This is, and I postponed going to get my building permit in the court so that we could sit down and meet with the town to settle this thing. Has there been a meeting set?
No, there's not yet.
No, I want the attorney, no, but he knows that I gave up over 2 months ago, okay, to attempt to meet with the town to resolve this issue, and he hasn't been able to schedule a meeting in those 2 months.
Maybe he hasn't asked the right parties. After all, we're the abutters. Moody Point Community Association and the Lumberland Creek Homeowners Association are the abutters. We have the most at stake. You never called us.
And I apologize for that. Hey, I'll take full blame for that, and I couldn't be any more wrong for not meeting. Okay?
All right, fine. Let's
And-
sit down.
And I'm ready and willing. You get the meeting, and I'll be there. You have anyone that you want at the meeting, I'm ready to go. Justin, did I not send you a memo Monday that we could meet? Just the town. Yes or no?
Mr. Cheney's asked for meetings. I haven't been able to get a clear sense of, what to do. I'm hoping that, this meeting is obviously one the town agreed to, and so I would, I beg to differ in that sense. I mean, we're here today. I'm here today on behalf of the town governing body to represent the town council's interests at their request. So that's why I'm here. I'm here for that reason.
It should be a no-brainer to put this together.
Okay, we'll give it, but all parties have to.
We'll give you the benefit of that, all right?
We'll do that.
This is Trish Simon. She is the president of the Moody Point Community Association.
Hi, John was so enamored, he jumped up to answer questions about Lot 13. I know that some of you are confused about the Lot 13, Lot 4. I think you all got copies of the map so you can see. Okay, my name is Trish Simon. I'm the president of the board of the Moody Point Community Association. And present in this room are also some residents of our community, including those who directly abut Lot 13. I just want to talk about Lot 4, because we're very serious about this. Since 2010, Mr. Cheney has been questioning the cleanup that took place after a devastating storm early in 2010 that damaged and destroyed hundreds, literally 400 to 500 trees on the MPC common land on your maps known as Lot 4. As you can see from the information that I have sent to your chairman and the emails the town has received from Mr. Cheney is now asking the town enforce the bylaws of the MPCA. Mr. Cheney is referring to a section of the bylaws under Power and Duties, Article 6, Section 12, that states, quote, repair, restore, or replace common land after damage. Please note that the word is or, and the board of the MPCA has done that. As stated in my email, working with UNH, licensed and certified foresters and arborists, the DES, and the town code enforcement officer, the damaged areas were cleared of massive debris and provisions were made to prevent runoff. It was stated in 2010 by our professionals that in 2 years we would be surprised at the regrowth that would take place. Each year prior to 2010 and each year since, the common land is always reviewed by professionals on an annual basis. Maintenance is made to the structures as needed, and our professionals work on maintaining a healthy woodland environment. Periodically, we provide times when our residents can ask all and any questions of our professionals. Our last walk around, open to all residents, including Mr. Cheney, was last fall. Since the storm cleanup, the land is repopulating itself with a diversity of trees as the professionals were hoping. We already have 3-foot pines as well as many more variety of hardwood trees that have grown due to the change in the landscape. Not one professional, certified forester or arborist, nor anyone at the DES agrees with Mr. Cheney's assessment that 25-foot trees should be planted in this shoreline area. We have photographs of the common land prior to the storm, photos of the storm damage, and photographs each year, 2011 and 2012. Photographs are regularly taken every year. At this point, I am feeling personally harassed. Numerous members of our community have regularly attended DES workshops on the Shoreline Protection Act. One resident has been appointed by the governor to the New Hampshire Shoreline Advisory Committee. The board and this community takes the management of this land very seriously. So I hope that this will be noted and that this will be the end of this. I wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Russ Simon, Cushing Road. I've been entertained tonight. The only one thing I don't think has been really mentioned that I would appreciate if the Conservation Commission doesn't have a map of all of Moody Point, it should get one. We don't have one, okay? That's, if you have the full map there, please recognize that Lot 13 is part of the Moody Point development and was part of the approval process. The Lynn Jennings home, which is no longer Lynn Jennings home.
Lot 12.
Okay, is part of the Moody Point development. They're members. So this Lot 13 that's being discussed is not an independent lot. It's part of the approved Moody Point development lot. And there are abutters in the Lumberland Association, which are along the north border on, I think you see Lot 6 or 6IA, as well as Lynn Jennings home. So this is a cornerstone and was part of the approval process on the clustered development, as has been said, to be open space and never invaded by human beings and the most environmentally sensitive. So we're sort of sitting here saying it's not an independent lot that's been dropped in the middle of our community. It's part of the overall approval process and was planned to be open, undeveloped space. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to clear up a couple of issues. I'm excited about the opportunity that we can all meet and just a quick synopsis. When Mr. Badger quoted an RSA, that RSA was enacted 3 years after Moody Point was developed, and so it doesn't apply to Moody Point, all right? And I think you can logically understand that. And in addition, you have to understand that when Moody Point became a lot of record, if you can envision this, in November 14th of '85, then I could say anything I wanted about what I wanted to do with that lot. And it's on record. I put it on record everywhere you want to be. I've wanted to give that land to the Nature Conservancy for over 20 years, as long as they've been in business, and we've been waiting for the right time to get the right value to do it. That's my right. What we'll get, if it has to be determined in a court of law, it will be. But what I'm saying is I had the right, once it was approved, and the record will show unconditionally, there was nothing ever said about Lot 13 ever being open space until in 1987, an employee of mine made a total false statement. Not only that false statement, all the statements. There's not a plan of record. So when they talk about Lot 13, you can't go to a plan and show Lot 13. When she said Lot 4, 11, 12, and 13 were open space, Lynn Jennings' house was on 12. And everybody agrees that wasn't open space. So the statement is wrong. But just keep in mind, that was in 1987 that she made that statement, and that's the only statement that anyone can ever prove, and that was at a non-binding meeting without a map. She had no authorization, on. It doesn't exist. But with the so the bottom line is, in a court of law, this property can be developed to the fullest. That doesn't change my right to donate it to the Nature Conservancy. And I'll work hard. I've spent over $200,000 fighting with everybody, the town, myself, everybody, and just to try to donate this land, all right? And so it's clear what I want to happen to it, okay? If I was vindictive or anything else, we'd be renting this to the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and every social. I'd have 1,000 people out there every day. But I want to protect that, okay? And I will work to protect it. My plan at the moment is to protect everything that we were originally going to protect and develop that what was never part of Lot 13, was never part of Lot 13. It was added to it in '87. Not the 87 we're just talking about, a previous 87. So, anyway, I don't need to take anybody's more time here tonight, so.
Mr. Cheney, I'd like to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, if you can go up to the podium, please, and state your name.
My name is Jan Jeremiah. I'm from Cushing Road.
Thank you.
And the explanation about the Nature Conservancy not wanting to be against people, because it's too difficult for them to manage the property if it comes right up against our properties. I appreciate that. It seems like a really good solution would be if Mr. Cheney donated that whole property to the road, to the Nature Conservancy. They wouldn't have to deal with the butters, and they would have the whole property, and they could care for it. Just my suggestion. Donate the whole thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Justin Richardson. I'm the town attorney. And I don't really want to kind of pick sides in the debate, but what I wanted to do was give the members of the commission, members of the public, an understanding of what the town's role has been and what the current status of Lot 13 is. There's a court case right now that's in Rockingham County Superior Court, and that is the denial of by the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the building permit. And Mr. Cheney has appealed that. He's also asked for a declaratory judgment and probably some other relief that I've left out. What I have done on behalf of the town is asserted the town's position that Lot 13 is subject to a development restriction under a couple different theories. One is as a result of the planning board's approval of the Moody Point development, and in particular, a condition that says that, or that's written on the plan, it's on, well, it's not there now, but on the bottom of that more or less same plan, it says the subdivision regulations of the town of Newmarket are part of this plat, and approval of this plat is contingent upon completion of all the requirements of said subdivision regulations, excepting only any variances or modifications made in writing. I believe it says that there are by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And Mr. Cheney takes a different position. He disputes the town's claim, but essentially what the town has done is said we'd like to have a deed restriction recorded on the entirety of Lot 13. So that will be a case that will be decided one way or the other by the court. The town will either prevail, in which case this lot will become unbuildable, or Mr. Cheney will prevail, in which case it will be his lot, more or less. The court, as you've heard, has already determined that Mr. Cheney is the owner of the lot of record, and that it wasn't required to be transferred to the association. But if you read the decisions, and Mr. Badger has already quoted them, so I'm not going to repeat them here. I mean, I think it was based on the representations that this lot would be conserved. I think that was a condition that was, at least if not expressly written on the plan, implied from it. It was in the zoning ordinance. It was in the subdivision regulations at the time. But the reason that's important is at the end of the day, if the town prevails, what will happen is the lot will be protected. It'll be restricted from development, but Mr. Cheney will still own it. And I think I'm not going to go too far on a limb if I say that, you know, there's a long history here, and I think as long as Mr. Cheney owns the lot, and as long as the Moody Point Association is, you know, has the same history as well, you know, there's going to continue to be problems. I'm not pointing the finger at either side, but what I would suggest is for maybe what this commission could do if it wanted to, and I'm not suggesting that you should or you shouldn't. That's really a decision for the town to make. But what I would suggest would be to find a way to implement what I see as what the original vision was for Lot 13. And that was to find a way to get the portions of the marsh to the Nature Conservancy or some organization, and then to find a way to protect the buffers. And I think that the value that hopefully a meeting could add to this would be to find a way to, rather than work through easements, you know, that are owned privately, and then you always end up with questions about, well, what can the private owner do? What can, you know, this owner or that owner do? You know, who's in which buffer where? I mean, those are complicated. I'm actually chair of a conservation commission in Newington, so I know firsthand how difficult that can be. I would encourage all the parties to, in light of the fact that I think the town will ultimately prevail in its lawsuit, but still won't own the property. Mr. Cheney will continue to own it, to see if we can find a way with all the parties that are here to get together and find a way to protect this property. Maybe it's for the town to acquire it, record a conservation easement on it that is acceptable to all the parties, convey the marsh to the Nature Conservancy. They can add that to their sanctuary. That's what Dwayne Hyde has suggested he would be interested in doing. From the Nature Conservancy. You know, maybe the town or one of the Moody Point associations could manage the property for public access in appropriate areas, and those details could be worked out, and the Conservation Commission could obtain or could retain like an executory interest, or someone else could retain an executory interest to enforce it. So that's kind of where the case is at right now. It's before the court. It'll probably take some time to work out. I think that, whatever discussions happen need to take into consideration, what the legal outcomes are, and I think that it's favorable for the town that we could get a development restriction. It would cost some money to get there. There's always risk that you can lose, even if you think your claims are good. But even if we were to prevail on everything, we could still be back in this room talking about, I apologize, that's me, talking about what trees could get planted where, not having an agreement of any sort. So I'll turn my phone off and then we can answer any questions if there are.
Sure. It's probably your wife wondering why you're not home yet.
I told her it would be a short meeting or a long one.
I told my wife it would be a long one.
I apologize for that. I forgot to turn it off.
Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I think we've all had that experience. Thank you, Justin, for your comments. I have heard what you have said, and it all seems reasonable to me.
Thanks, and I'm really here to help. I mean, I'm not here to push anything in any direction. I think it's important, and ultimately any expenditure of Conservation Commission funds or acquisition of property under the statutes, under 36A, has to come back to the town council. So I think it's important, for this board to decide where it wants to go. We can interface with the town council, interface with, obviously, the Moody Point Community Association is an important player. Mr. Cheney is the owner of the property. So I think there's a way to find a solution. It's just trying to see if we can put the pieces together.
Yeah, I look forward to being invited to a meeting to participate in a process to move forward to try and resolve this issue, which seems to have been a thorn for many people and an expense for many people. It would be nice if we could reduce all of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just
Yes.
question. It's a great idea to, get a meeting together. And I'd like to have at least two from the Conservation Commission there. Does that mean it's a public meeting, or do we need to take minutes?
There are a variety of options. Certainly any meeting with legal counsel is not subject to the minutes requirements or the notice requirements under 91A.
I don't want to get into a position
okay.
where the board did a few years ago, the town council was saying, he said, they said.
Mm-hmm.
And minutes not being, would it be a public meeting and we meet with them as advisors?
There's a whole range of options, depending on who needs to be present at the meeting, what subjects are going to get discussed. Sometimes it's better to do things in public. Sometimes it's more open if you can do it in other formats. So that's really I'd be happy to review that with you and discuss with you the objectives and
ultimately, we are just an advisory board. We can't make decisions for the town. The town council has to make our decisions.
If there were a conservation easement
Yeah.
that were agreed that
Right,
this
but
committee would manage, then
But we
You would
can't
want
make
it
a
to be
decision
Absolutely.
without
That's
going
right.
through the town council, as far as
What-
if there's a way to rectify it.
I'd suggest that as the town's attorney, I would meet with whoever wanted to be the town's representative, and we could kind of go over those ground rules and come up with a plan that seemed to best reflect how the town wanted to approach things. But there's a variety of options that are out there. That's really the easiest way to answer your question.
I don't want to, go through all this and find out we missed dotting an I.
No, that's my job, to make sure that we do that right, and it's easily done. It can be. I think any meeting in which adverse parties are present generally has to be what would be negotiation of pending claims or litigation. So we could meet in non-public to discuss resolution of a claim with Mr. Cheney if we wanted to. We could do it with only a single representative of the board so that there isn't a quorum and there's not a meeting. And obviously whatever would be discussed would then have to come back. I mean, there are so many different, there's a full spectrum of different approaches, and it really depends on what it is we're trying to accomplish, whether it's just to lay the groundwork for what might be acceptable to bring it back later, or whether it's to actually make decisions. And so depending on what you're looking to accomplish at each step, there's a little bit different approach that would need to be considered.
Thank you.
When do you think we can meet?
Next week. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you.
Look forward to meeting with you. Yay, Becky.
Did you know that?
It's recorded.
Okay. This is where we would have public comments if there were any public left. But there isn't.
Isn't that one, I mean...
That was all it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Part of public comment.
Yes, I believe so.
Somebody's still here.
Wow.
Oh, we do still have one member of the public here. This is where we'd be taking public comments if you're so inclined. Doesn't look like it. Fair enough. Justin, you're welcome to stay, but I don't think you have to unless you have anything else you'd like to add,
If you wanted to
if you don't mind.
I was going to suggest if you wanted to, I don't know what's on your agenda to complete. It is, if you're going to be done shortly and wanted to talk about, some of the underlying issues in the litigation, I could talk with you in a, what's called a non-meeting to talk about, what the risks are, what the outcomes are, what the prior settlement discussions are. That's obviously not the type of thing I can do when the camera's rolling.
Sure.
But I don't know what your pleasure is, if you're anxious to, chew on this, or however you'd like to proceed.
I would like to, personally, I would like to be part of it, withdrew.
Okay.
Speaking of town council, I mean,
And-
there's a lot, Justin can tell you, there's a lot of history and background behind this whole situation.
Sure. That's obvious by the attendance.
But I think it's, like you said, we have to get together and find out what the past, exactly what was written from the planning board back in '85, before we go into a meeting.
Well, we can't change the past.
Right.
We can deal with the facts that we have in front of us today, and we can try to move forward in a way to resolve the issue. The past will be in dispute until all of those involved are dead, and probably another 50 years. And that's just the way it's going to be. People have different opinions, and we're all entitled to our opinion. Ultimately, there are legal judgments, and those legal judgments are the things that we all have to work with and work around. And so that's where we are.
I mean, two points. If the Newmarket, representatives of the Conservation Commission are going to be involved in the future, it would be efficient to, if we could, to avail ourselves of Justin's being here now, so the town doesn't have to have him come back at a different point to inform us about things. However, if we really aren't going to be involved until months and months down the road, and this can happen later, there's no sense learning all of the minutia right now.
True.
Plus, he's on the town's time clock.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And
So
I heard Mr. Cheney and Mr. Badger, I believe, talk about meeting next week, and so that's why I thought maybe while I was here today, we could just touch base. And I really wasn't thinking more than, 5 or 10 minutes.
We
So
could go into
it's, but I
non-public.
haven't seen your agenda, so I don't know what you're looking at having to do today, so.
Could we go non-public or right now and then
Yeah.
go back into public, Justin?
Yes, yes,
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
We've done it in the past.
Right, and that way,
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
Right, let's do that.
Well,
I
I'll
would
make the
s-
motion that we go into non-public for consultation.
Do we need to
Sure.
cite an RSA for that? I believe we do.
Consultation with legal counsel is an exemption to the meeting requirement, so I would suggest that you recess for a specified period of time to meet with legal counsel, and then we'll
And
just
s-
proceed on that basis.
With non-publics, no, it's not a, we'll just
It's called a
recess
non-
instead of going non-public?
That's right, it's called a non-meeting is what it's referred to as, and you can't
So-
make any decisions, but it's just
Right.
to review the facts and
Okay.
the law.
So I'll make that motion that we recess for 15 minutes for a legal counsel, if anybody would second that.
I'll second.
You didn't hear that, yeah?
I don't think Drew did, but that's okay. Did you get that? That's all that matters.
Can I ask a question?
Well, do you want to wait?
No, he wants to
No,
ask
I
a
wa-
question.
I want to ask as part of the public portion. I recuse myself from the previous discussion as an employee at DUSEP survey. Do I need to recuse myself from the non-public session?
You have a duty under RSA, I believe it's 42-1A, to maintain the confidentiality of any information imparted to you as a public official. If you feel that your role with DUSET survey would conflict with that, then it would probably be, you'd be well advised not to be in the non-meeting portion where confidential information is discussed. I don't know the background or know anything to suggest one way or the other. It's really your call as a public official, but that is what the law requires.
I feel it wouldn't affect my confidentiality, but I don't want there to be any questions, so I will recuse myself.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second?
Yes.
And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0.